Okay, welcome everybody to this training. My name is Maarten Soomer, and today I will tell you about marketing analytics applications. Marketing analytics is basically using data science to optimize your marketing activities. And because, of course, I will focus on applications that are relevant to non-profits. Of course, and that's mainly related in the area of fundraising. So I'm really excited to do this, and I hope it will be useful for some of your products. What will we do today? I will start with introducing myself and the topic of today. Like I said, the topic is marketing analytics for non-profits, and that mainly touches the subject of fundraising, how to acquire and retain donors for your non-profit organization. It's very relevant to take as like a main process there the customer lifecycle, or maybe better in the case of non-profits, the donor lifecycle, to call it that way. And we will use that donor lifecycle to go over several marketing analytics applications. And we will deep dive on two of them specifically, which will be marketing mix modeling and churn modeling. And in the end, we will wrap up with a summary and some tips on where to start, how to start on these topics. Yeah, we're together in a Zoom meeting today. So Kate will monitor the chat, but also maybe if you have a question, it's convenient to raise your hand using the Zoom control. And then, well, I can stop and have your question. So either through the chat or by raising your hand and then speaking up. That will be nice to make it a bit interactive, maybe. Yeah, so like I said, let me start by introducing myself. I'm Maarten Soomer. Today, most of my time, my full-time job, to say it that way, I spent as a lead data scientist at a company called Traffics. It's a company selling flight tickets mainly. Our brands are listed here. Not relevant, but I lead a data science team in this big e-commerce organization. So you can imagine I do a lot also in the area of marketing analytics. Of course, we're also acquiring customers online through the internet. So data and marketing analytics is very relevant. So many of the applications we have in my company with our data science team are also marketing analytics applications. Next to that, I'm an assistant professor. I have only 10% of my time I work for the University of Amsterdam. That's also, of course, also my connection to analytics for a better world. As an assistant professor, I teach a course in marketing analytics, in data science, in online marketing. The course is called. It's for MBA students, and there's a similar course for master econometrics students. And I've been doing that for already 8 years. So it's really a nice combination to have the practical business experience and teaching a course about similar topics in the University of Amsterdam. I really like the combination. And before I worked at Traffics, I thought I mentioned that here. I worked for a long time also at Ortec. And probably you saw that name before, and also some trainings, I think, in this fellowship are given by Ortec people. I know Robert Monet, the director of Analytics for a Better World, from my time at Ortec. And Ortec is also one of the founding companies, I think, of Analytics for a Better World. So through Ortec and University of Amsterdam, I'm connected with Analytics of a Better World. Yeah, and that's how they asked me to give this training. But enough about myself. Let's go to the topic of today, marketing analytics, and tell you a bit more about that. Marketing analytics, well, a lot of marketing analytics comes from the online advertising world. You can imagine like parties like Google and Facebook who manage all the online advertising. There's a lot of data science involved there. Actually, a lot of innovative data science applications came from online advertising. Maybe that's a bit sad that so many advances in data science came from using it to show targeted advertising to you, showing online ads to you, but that's the way it is. Google and Facebook are having big data science teams, and they're making their money with doing and optimizing online advertising. But of course, that's not the main focus of today, online advertising. But more in general, what it has in common, what the whole of marketing analytics have in common with the online advertising focus is that, of course, data can really help in marketing to make sure that we target the right customer with the right project at the right time, the right place, with the right message or the right advertisement. And data can really be helping, especially like in the word right, their data can really help to understand what's right for which customer, what's the right timing, what's the right place, what's the right message in your ad. And it can, of course, help to do this all very effectively and efficiently, reducing the waste by getting insights from data that is there. So that's in general about marketing analytics. It's very general. Let's focus a bit more on how that works for non-profits. What's our product and what's our customer in the non-profit situation? Well, of course, you could say that the product is the cause of the non-profit. They're helping children in need. They're helping people when there are disasters. They're helping doctors to go to disaster areas. Whatever is the cause, that's basically, in marketing terms, the product that you're selling, right? That's what the customer wants to support the cause, and that's basically the product he's buying, supporting the cause, and he's supporting the cause by doing donations or becoming even a regular donor, a direct debit donor that's as kind of a subscription to making donations every month or every year or every quarter. So that's basically the product as a non-profit that we would sell to customers. And basically, so these customers we would call donors in this situation. And so this really involves, of course, the fundraising side of the non-profits. Not actually the side of the non-profit that gives the aid, but the side of the non-profit that is raising the money to be able to support the cause and do all their good work. Curious to hear, maybe you can raise hands of any of your is working on the fundraising side of a non-profit or involved with doing things on fundraising side of non-profits, just to get an idea. I don't see many hands. Well, still, I hope this will be relevant for you. Of course, in general, it should, of course, be relevant to any non-profit, because I think most of the non-profits, of course, they rely on donations to get their funding and to do their work for a big part. And hopefully this will be also relevant to some of you is considering to do like a fellowship project in this direction. Like I said, a very concept that we're considering in marketing a lot is the customer lifecycle, or the donor lifecycle if we're talking about non-profits and fundraising again. Very simple version of this, but that we'll do for today is this one. Basically, we consider 3 steps. And the first thing we need to do is attracting a potential donor. So we need to build like brand awareness, make some person that potentially would be interested to give money aware that we are even existing as an organization, make them aware about the good work that we're doing, to get them interesting and to create that awareness. Sorry, I skipped one slide. Let's go back to that one. Yeah, because first, what are the main, that's always good to start with, what are the main goals and KPIs in fundraising? I made a small example of a driver tree, how it might look on the fundraising side. Of course, quite naturally, the main overall goal would be to maximize or increase the total donation amount, let's say in the coming year or the coming 3 years or 5 years in a certain fixed period. But of course, we can split out this overall goal in sub KPIs and sub goals and sub actions. So I tried to do that here a bit. We could maybe separate two main donation streams. One ad hoc donations and the other ones coming from donors. And I mean by that people who are periodically, regularly giving a donation. Maybe within these donors, this is basically in marketing, we would call this a product segmentation or a customer segmentation. We can distinguish types of donors like gold donors who give like bigger donations, silver donors, bronze donors. And for each of these group of donors, we could split out further. Our donation amount is coming from, well, determined by the number of donors we're having, the donation amount per donor. If we look further into the number of donors, there's a number of donors, and we would look at donations for the coming years. There's a number of donors, that we're having today. But we will also be sure that in the coming months and the coming years, some of those will leave, but we will also acquire some new donors in that period. So in total, that will make up our donor base for the coming years. And then the second big factor is the donation amount per donor, which determines on the frequency, how often do they donations, and what's the donation amount per donor per period, per donation, let's say. So you will see in the applications that we'll go over, also in the customer lifetime, that each of them will help on one of these KPIs to improve one or several of these KPIs. For example, we're talking about attracting new donors, of course, that will help to increase this number, the number of acquired donors. If we talk about retaining donors, avoiding churn of donors, we talk about decreasing the number of churned donors and keeping this number higher. If we're talking about something like upselling, we are more here. We're trying to increase the donation amount or the donation frequency of donors. So each of these applications you will see, they will work on one of multiple of these calls. And in the end, in that way, will help to increase our overall goal. And of course, before we start talking about data and applications, I think it's very important that we talk about what we want to achieve. So that's why I included this driver tree here. Indeed, and a good way to go through these applications is this donor lifecycle, this customer lifecycle. First, we need to attract these donors. Then we make sure they actually get donors in the conversion phase. And we want, once they are donors, we want to do the most to retain them. What's very important in the attract phase? Well, we do marketing activities, we do advertising to create brand awareness of our nonprofit, awareness of our cause. So to gain interest from the right people. Going back to the driver tree again, this will help hopefully to acquire new donors. The first step is to attract their interest. Of course, then the second step is to convert them. Make sure that once we got their attention, once they are aware that we are existing as a nonprofit, we want maybe to get them to our website. And on our website, make sure that our website is the best as possible, and they will find easily, in an easy way, they will be persuaded, and there's a good user interface, user experience, so they can sign up as a donor. And that's the step they have to go through. They have to sign up in some way to become a donor. And this convert step is about that, making sure that that is as easy, as attractive as possible. So they will really make that choice. So online website optimization, A/B testing, we will talk a bit about that. That's part of this phase. Then, and that's maybe, this is maybe the most essential phase, I would say, in something like, especially in fundraising, is to retain donors. Once they signed up, of course, To have a donor is very valuable, and it's often easier to retain a current donor than to acquire a new donor. So this is an activity I believe that almost every nonprofit who is doing fundraising is having donors should be very good in. Retaining those donors, avoiding that they churn, that they enter donorship. And also in this phase, we can try to increase, do some upselling, increase their donation amount or their donation frequency, or when there's some disaster, make sure they make an extra donation to support for that specific disaster. What is also very interesting about this phase is once they signed up to be a donor and they start doing frequent donations, we know a little bit more about the customer. Once they sign up, they give some information about themselves. We will see the donations. So we can understand a bit better their behavior, who they are, if they might be likely to churn, or if they might be likely to be able to give to increase their donation amount. So very relevant, the applications here in the retain phase. Well, let's go into the applications. Any questions until now before we do that? Great, then let's continue. So I will use again the customer lifecycle, the donor lifecycle, to go through several applications. And like I said, 2 of them we will discuss in a bit more detail. Like I said, in the attract phase, what is very important is how to attract customers efficiently, donors. Most marketing activities require some investment, right? Online advertising, offline advertising, maybe doing a door-to-door campaign. It requires an investment. It requires resources. If you do a door-to-door campaign, it requires some volunteers or some paid organization who will actually do the work. So it's very good to know that every money we spend there is wisely spent. And that we choose the right activities, we choose the right channels to spend our money on, the ones that are most effective. A second thing to think about is targeting. It's a bit a different angle. It's about which are the customers who should approach. And we can use different channels. And channels, I mean, we can advertise on radio versus television versus online. But also a channel can be a door-to-door campaign, where we go around the neighborhoods to try to. And for each of these channels, targeting works a little bit differently. So it's more something that we typically would do on a channel level to optimize basically the activities that we do in that channel. Like in which neighborhoods would we do our door-to-door campaigns. Again, data can help to make all of these choices, and data science. That's why I'm telling about this, of course. Let's first look at how to optimize our overall spend in this phase, our marketing and advertising spend aimed at attracting and converting, also acquiring new donors. Well, I think this is a really good quote from a modern a pioneer marketing more than 100 years ago. He was starting the first department stores. He invented basically the price tag, this guy, and I think this statement of him describes really what we're trying to do with marketing modeling. What he said was like, half the money I spent on advertising is wasted, he felt. The trouble is, I don't know which half. Marketing mix modeling is a data science technique that exactly tries to solve this problem that he was having and try to understand which advertising in which channel, which marketing activity delivers which return. Because of course, also as a nonprofit, especially as a nonprofit, you want to spend your marketing budget effectively. So you want to know from different channels, different activities, how effective are they actually? How much are we getting back from the money that we put in them? For some, it's very easy. Some very direct channels, like door-to-door, it's maybe easy to evaluate because you just know I went into this street or this neighborhood and I got so many donors, so it's very direct. But like advertising on television and radio, it's a lot more difficult. And this is also addressing those kind of challenges. To still learn how effective is that. And it can help to make decisions like what overall marketing budget do I need and how do I allocate that budget over different channels, campaigns, and activities to get the most out of it, acquire the most new donors for a given marketing budget, let's say. Okay, to be able to do this with data science, we need data, of course. So let's see what data is needed to be able to do these applications. Well, as you can understand, we need all kind of data about the marketing activities and the money we're spending on those marketing activities in a specific period. So for example, here is a simple example. Here you see on a weekly basis, you see all kind of data on what we're doing. And so for some weeks we were advertising on television, and some other weeks we were advertising on radio. You can try put all kind of activities in. Maybe also somebody from the nonprofit was a guest in a talk show. An interview was done with him. Well, that didn't cost any money, but we can still quantify, let's say, that activity by the amount of people it reached. Let's say there was 1 million people watching that talk show. That would be great, of course. And so you want, and you need data about all your marketing activities, and you need to quantify in some way either how much money you spent on them or what their reach was, what their intensity was. It can be as simple as a Boolean variable, a 0, 1, indicating if you did that activity, yes or no. That's also possible. But this is the kind of data, one of the data sources that goes into a marketing mix modeling model. This data can come from marketing and campaigns management tools. It's actually not that easy to collect because typically you need already to get this kind of data, combine data from different data sources. And maybe the TV and radio spend is coming from a different system than the online advertising spend. And then if you want to add this interview to it, well, maybe that's more like a manual thing to have the data on that one. So actually, it can be quite difficult to collect and combine all this data together. Another thing you could do is, of course, you can segment these kind of models or this data by region and product. You can build basically separate models for each region or product that you're having. And then for that region or product, you would have a data set like this, focused on that region and that product. What were my marketing activities in a specific period? Of course, there's a second type of data that you need to do this application. And you also need historic data of, okay, I did this marketing activities. What was my return? What did I sell in those same periods? In terms of the nonprofit, we would probably look at the number of acquired donors in that period. So for the same weeks, we would have our sales numbers, the numbers of donors acquired, new donors acquired. And then there's actually a third data source that can be very important in these kind of models, and that's external effects per period. Why is this so important? You can imagine sales or the number of donors you acquired. It's not only influenced by the marketing activities that you're doing. There can also be all kind of external effects like weather, like seasonality, that impact the number of acquired donors. And basically, we should include in the model, as much as possible, all the variables that we think might affect the number of acquired donors. Otherwise, we will overestimate probably the effect of our marketing activities, and we don't get like an unbiased model. It can be weather seasonality, especially in case of non-profits. I imagine it can also be like news events, like disasters, events happening. If there's a disaster somewhere, you get more donations with your non-profit, depending on what you're doing exactly. Let's say you're the Red Cross and there is a disaster somewhere. I'm sure that will trigger extra donations or even new donors. And it's not because you did some marketing activity. It's unfortunately because there was somebody somewhere and disaster. So yeah, in that case, it's very important to include that data into the model. So let's combine it all together. Well, I left out here the external effects, but the effect is the same. Basically, you want to combine those data sets and making a row in your data, exactly, make a record per period where you put next to each other, well, all the marketing activity variables, like the TV spend, the radio spend, and maybe this reach of these interviews. And all the variables related to the external effects. And then also, of course, the sales, the thing you're interested in, the number of acquired donors at the end. That's what we call then typically, probably you heard that before in some other data science introduction course, what we call our target, the things we want to predict for the future, and we want to understand the number of sales. So of course, you need to also put that in your training data sets for your model. So in this way, we build a model set by combining different data sets together. So for marketing mix modeling, data collection is a challenge, can be quite challenging, but we build now the data set that goes into our marketing mix model. What is a marketing mix model? It's supervised machine learning. I think you heard that term also before in an introduction to data science course. Often, one of the simplest model, linear regression, is often used. It's actually very suitable because also in this case, we're not only interested in making predictions. Actually, we are mainly interested in understanding impact, understanding how impactful is a certain channel, how effective is a certain channel. And there, a linear regression is really suitable because it gives us the coefficients in the end. Well, so we understand the relations basically between how much money we're spending and how much extra sales that will deliver. And that's what we want to understand in this application. That's also what you see here. I will zoom in a bit on that one. And so one of the results of our marketing mix modeling might be a picture of this. And this represents the relation we found by the model between the spend in a certain channel, individual channel, versus the sales that it delivers. So for example, what you see here, that once we start in this example, once we're starting on online, pretty fast we're building sales. But once we come somewhere to about this level of spending here, well, we had all the gain, and only by spending more, only a very small additional gain is being, we get only very small additional gain. We have diminishing returns here. Now, once we start spending from zero, it has we get a lot of new donors, but at some point we reached everybody that would be interested, and we can spend more money online, but it doesn't make sense. Sorry. For TV, we see that, well, it takes longer until it starts flattening. Actually, it looks pretty linear. So this might be an outcome of our model, and very interesting, of course, to see per channel what would be the good spending levels, and that could help us to allocate our overall budget over the different channels, as you can imagine. Well, a small example. Let's only look at the TV spend that we're having in the first few weeks and the sales in the first few weeks. From our previous example, if we see it here that first week we didn't do any TV, we still acquired some donors, but you see also in the weeks that we're doing some TV spend, indicated by the orange bars, we're doing better acquisition. acquiring more donors, and it starts decreasing a bit when we stop doing TV again.
Maarten,
Yes.
there's some questions in the chat.
Great.
Zafar would like to know which tools you use for this analysis: Excel, Power BI, or another tool.
Yeah, this depending on the size of data, this could be done in Excel, and this could be done also in Python. I think that would make Excel if the data is small, Python if the data gets a little bit bigger. The outcome you could definitely show in Power BI, but the model itself, it wouldn't run naturally in Power BI.
Okay. Esme would like to know, where do you account for the delay between advertising period and the period of increased sales?
Very good question. It goes a little bit too far, I think, for today, because I just want to give a basic introduction of the model. But definitely that's something you should do. But and typically we would do it using a variable transformation called ad stock. So you could Google on that one if you want to dive deeper into it. But indeed, that's something very good to consider when you building these kind of models, that there might be a delay indeed between the spending and the increase in sales. And there are ways to address that, mainly doing an ad stock transformation on your spending variables.
Great. And there's one last question from Henry. This graph makes it look like there is a non-linear element in the regression, but you just added another term in the model to capture the diminishing returns.
Yes, also a very good question. Also, it's like I said, I wanted to explain the basics, but indeed here you see the non-linear relationship, and usually you would also achieve that by transforming your variables. So you wouldn't look directly at spend, but you would, for example, look at the log, the natural logarithm of the spend. And using a natural logarithm of the spend would give you a chart looking like this with the diminishing returns. So it's a very, very good question.
Great, thanks. That's all the questions for now.
Great. Here we didn't do any of the transformations, but basically ad stock and doing logarithm transformations to take this diminishing returns is something you should do in practice. So I'm very happy with this question. This is a very simple example. We're not doing that. We're just we're assuming a linear relationship in this example between the TV spend and the sales. If we fit our linear regression model on this data, we would find this line as our prediction. So not too bad, actually, right? It's quite a fit the green line pretty well. And what does this regression say? Basically, if we would look to the coefficients, this regression says that without doing any TV, our base level of sales is in a regular week without TV is around 47,000. It will be like the average of the weeks we didn't do TV. Close to that. And we see that the incremental obtained by television per euro spent on television, we would have approximately a little bit over 1 extra sale. That's basically what this model would do. And like you said, like we see here in the chart, the fit of this model is actually pretty good. Although some of the assumptions are not very good, like the ad stock and the diminishing returns are not covered here. But of course, already as an insight, you can see how this works, because now we are understanding that what we get back for every euro spent on television, which is very useful. And then, we're getting more than €1. If this would be, if this would represent, this is maybe number of sales. But let's say if we earn €1 per sale, this would already be good, because we're spending €1 on television and we're getting €1.14 in sales back. So and of course, if we do this for multiple channels, we can also see this channel is more effective than the other channel. if we include the logarithms to get the diminishing returns, we can get to charts like this. So this is how marketing mix modeling works and the kind of insights you will get from. Any questions? More questions on marketing mix modeling before we jump to the next one?
No.
Great. Second thing, like I already said, to consider in the attract phase is who to target. And like with television already, we're targeting, it's a very broad targeting, people who watch television. Well, a little bit more targeted already, it becomes like, of course, we can target specific television programs, maybe like news programs. Or just entertainment programs. And the television stations will give you some information on what kind of audience watch the program typically. But it's still pretty broad. But it's something you want to consider. If you use a certain channel, which audience to target, which audience is relevant and is likely to become a donor for your nonprofit. Different channels also have different ways of targeting customers. There's a big difference between online channels and offline channels. First three here in the table are online channels. The first row represents the offline channels. With online channels, it's typically quite direct. Things are direct measurable to some extent. And so we can directly measure how much clicks or even conversions we get from a specific online campaign and what it costs. And we can use several target mechanisms. Depends a bit per channel. For social media, we can focus on user demographics and interests. What did they like on Facebook? Are they reading? Are they interested in non-profit kind of topics? That's what you can target in the Facebook advertising, for example. In search engine advertising, for example, on Google search, it's a bit different. You target mainly on the search keywords. But also very powerful, because if I'm searching, let's say, maybe on the earthquake in Morocco, and you're a humanitarian organization who's helping there, well, you want to advertise using that search keywords and get my attention. And then there's online display, which is basically it's the display ads that you see on news sites like CNN, typically on the big entertainment websites, on the big publisher websites, you would see those banner advertisements. There you can use things like the context of the website, but also information. Typically, the advertising networks will have some information about your browsing behavior. Then there's offline. It's much more broader and much more specific. We know about the cost, of course, we have to pay them. We know a bit about the reach, like I already said in the with the television example. But it's very broad, so we can target only quite broadly in an overall audience with maybe some demographics, broad demographics things, and a certain reach number. 1 million people are watching this television show. And then the last two categories, those are more at like direct marketing activities like door-to-door and telemarketing. Well, again, we have different targeting mechanisms. In door-to-door, what is very interesting, I think we can plan which neighborhoods to visit. And we can use data science again to predict which neighborhoods will deliver the most new donors based on data from the past, how successful we were in certain neighborhoods with some data about these neighborhoods. And we can match that to do really optimization of our planning. If we match it with resource constraints that we might be having, where do we have people, in which regions do we have how many people, and in that way we can optimize our door-to-door planning. So that's about targeting. More questions about targeting. So it's more specific per channel, what's possible and how to do it. But again, we can optimize it typically using data science.
No questions.
Okay, let's then go to the convert phase, where we attracted their attention, and specifically online. Maybe we showed them an advertisement, they clicked, and now they're on our website. But of course, we still need to convert them. Once they're on our website, they can browse around, read a lot of things, but in the end, we want to, we hope they're becoming a donor. Yeah, and of course, our website should be as optimized as possible, basically, for the people who want to become a donor, that they have a good user experience, they will sign up. And the tool that really can help there is A/B testing. If you have some idea on how to make your website better, this is doing an experiment, but evaluating this experiment, generating data to really establish if the idea is better. So you have some idea to how to improve a certain page, maybe change the colors a bit, write a different text, put the bottom on top instead of all the way down. And your hypothesis is that that's going to work better than the page you have today. Don't just plug in the new version, do something like A/B testing. So half of the traffic will give the current page, the other half of the traffic will get the test page, and you just monitor whichever of the two versions will give you the most new donors. Very powerful tool to experiment and basically generate data to evaluate if version A or version B is better. And then when you collected that data, you need to do proper statistical testing to really identify if B was really better than A or not, because you want to take a really statistical significant decision. Yeah, so that's on the converting stage. Any questions?
Nope.
Cool. Let's then move to retaining. We have acquired donors, basically, and it's very important to retain them, like I said before. Like I said before, I think this is really very essential. Once you have some kind of donors who are subscribed, who are doing fixed period donations, yeah, you should do everything you can to retain them. What is also an advantage in this phase is you know a little bit more about the donors, about their behavior, how much value do they bring, might they be willing to do an upsell to increase their amount. And you can also find that not approaching all donors in the same way might be beneficial. So doing some kind of segmented or targeted or even personalized communication might really help here. So this is where the applications in the retain phase are all about. Yeah, and I think the most essential one is churn modeling. So we will dive a bit deeper on that one.
Before we do, Maarten, there's 2 questions.
Great.
Valerie would like to know, how quickly does B testing return results?
That's a very good question. Yeah, like I said, you need statistical significant results. It depends on several factors, but it depends, for example, what is like your conversion rate. So of the people who see the page, how many of them, which % of them sign up as a donor? If that's like quite a big number, like, I don't know, let's say above 10, 20%, that will make the requirement of the number of tests you need to do, well, the number of people you need to have makes it smaller. And on the other hand, it also depends on the difference, how much significance you want to have, and which differences you want to measure between A and B. How big is the difference you want to measure? So it depends a bit on on your exact setup, but it can be quite big actually. So it can be like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of visitors on that page that you should split in A and B. Then you can draw a conclusion, and after that you can use the best one.
All right. James would like to know, do you think there's a threshold based on the size of the category of the donor to decide whether it's effective to target them via marketing activities versus sales approaches? For example, institutional donors are probably less likely to be reached by marketing strategies versus individual donors.
Yes, I think most of what I told until now would mostly apply to let's say more the mass donors, so maybe smaller donors, just the average folks, let's say, who are a donor, to put it that way, and less of the frequent. And I think targeting becomes much more important once you try to reach a few very wealthy donors, for example. And then you probably wouldn't use television as a medium, I can imagine. So yeah, this is mainly focused on, let's say, mass customer segments.
Great, thanks. That's all the questions.
Great. Okay, let's go to churn modeling. Yeah, I think very important and relevant application for your donors. Which donors are at risk of churning? That's the main question we want to answer. What we also would like to understand is which factors impact churn behavior. And of course, what can I do to prevent donors from churning? That's what we like to understand in this application. What kind of data do we need? Well, and this data is typically a bit easier than I would say in the marketing mix modeling, because typically, hopefully, everything is collected and can get collected from one system, the CRM system, customer relationship management system, where we keep information about all our customers, all our donors. What's definitely in that kind of system, we have a few donors here, like Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Goofy, very interesting donors for this cause. Typically, we have some demographic information for them in the system, like their address, their year of birth, their email, their phone number, their income would be very interesting. We might ask them when signing up, but maybe it's too sensitive, so probably not. And of course, we can use this data to all kind of feature engineering. From the address, we can get like the town, the region, the country, the neighbors. Maybe we can add neighborhood demographics. From the date of birth, of course, we can understand their age or their generation or whatever. So this is already very useful data. But I would say that actually the most essential data is this one. It's more about their behavior, the transactions or the donations they have done in the past. How often are they donating? What's their average donation amount? When was their last donation? When was the last time they were in contact with us? Maybe they had a complaint, or they interacted with customer service, or we called them to do some upsell. It's even usually more powerful than the demographics. The demographics can help, but this is really powerful, of course. If we saw that somebody did a lot of donations in the past, but recently he stopped doing donations, that might be an indication that he has some doubts. And well, maybe we should give him a call or send him an email or whatever. Yeah, and did he participate even from our organization online? Did he open our emails? Did he visit our website if we would know? So all very relevant here. And again, we can do a lot of feature engineering here in terms of recency, frequency here, of the donations, the contacts. So this is really very essential data to put in your churn model. Typically also in your CRM system, so that helps. And then, of course, to come to our target, you need also information basically about the subscription status. We can see our regular donors as somebody having a subscription, and every month they're donating some amount. When did they join? Did they cancel? Yes or no until now? When did they cancel? What was the reason for the cancellation? Could be very useful, actually, to use as a filter. I will come to that. So this is all very important to have, of course, essential to build our model. Why is the cancellation reason very important? Well, basically what we want to include in our model is cancellation reasons we can avoid, because that's our goal. So I heard the story before. It's kind of about the bank who built a churn model, and then they found out like age was their most important feature in the model. But basically, it turned out in the end they had a lot of old customers. And one day old people, they die. And then they finish their bank account, right? But unfortunately, there's not much the bank could do about that. They cannot avoid in these cases that customer will churn. So actually, the churn model hadn't much value because they only learned, hey, old customers will die and then their bank account will stop. In this application, we want to focus on churn that we can avoid, that we can prevent, hopefully. So we want to filter out these kind of cases when people churn because they die. And other reasons we cannot do any prevention. And churn is our target variable again. It follows from the cancellation date. Typically in building a trained test set with machine learning, we want to take some reference date in the past to be able to build a train set and say everybody who churns before that date we consider as churned for the model, and everybody who didn't churn by that reference date for our model training, it's still a customer. Or churned within so many months after that reference date. So that's a bit of a way to build our target in the data set and to build a train and a test model. Train and a test set in our data. All of this, I think, will be covered in much more detail in your machine learning course, how you will build train and test sets and that kind of stuff. But for this application, here you have some guidance already. It's again a supervised machine learning model. Now we have our data set ready with all these data about our customers and then the target. Did they churn, yes or no? It's a classification model. So we want to we have a binary target, yes or no. So we can use supervised machine learning models doing classifications like logistic regression, random forest, boosted trees. They will all be covered in your machine learning course. And what we want to predict, what they give, is actually a risk on churning, a probability that a certain customer will churn. And of course, we will only do that for our current customers, so we don't have to include Scrooge McDuck and Goofy anymore because they already have churned. Of course, we are interested to know in the end from our current customers, what is their risk of churning. Well, and then we see here that Pluto has a really high risk of churning. And so how does this model work? Well, it looks like maybe Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, and Daisy Duck are quite safe, but we want to approach maybe Donald Duck and Pluto. We want to take some action to avoid that they would churn.
Sorry, Maarten, what kind of data can we collect from already churned customers or donors that could help us feed into the algorithm for the churn algorithm for the ones that didn't churn?
From already churned, it is very important to have this similar kind of data that we show here. All this data also from churned customers in the past, because what we want our machine learning model to learn is those customers really help to learn how do churned customers behave. Is there some behavior before they shortly before they churned or a while before they churn that gives an indication that they churned? How is the behavior from customers who churned at some point different from the customers that did not churn at that point in time? And that's actually that's what we want to understand. How is the behavior from customers that churned at a certain point in time different from other customers that didn't churn at that point in time? That's really, and that's the patterns we want to understand, because that would help to make a prediction from our current customer. Do we see similar behavior on customers who didn't churn yet today, but they're showing that behavior that signals likely that it's likely that they will churn. That's what we're trying to find. Does this answer your question?
Yes, but there is part of it that could be not very quantifiable. Like, for example, they filed a complaint. How can you model that?
Cool. Yeah, hopefully that would be tracked in your customer relationship management, but that might not always be the case in every organization. So as with every data science problem, of course, the first thing, if you're really starting on it, is to assess is, do we have the data to attack this problem and then to make something, to do something useful with. And this data would be very useful, but I wouldn't say it's impossible without it. But what you need to know is at least, well, like, did a certain customer churn in the past, yes or no?
Thank you.
Yeah, once you have these probabilities, the churn risk, you want to take action on the ones, of course, that have a high risk. And there also data can really help, because having the predictions is only step one. So you build a fancy machine learning model, now you have predictions, but if you don't do anything, it won't help a lot. It won't do anything. So you have to act on the predictions by approaching the high-risk customers. But of course, you also want to evaluate how your actions, if they really help or no. So again, in measuring the effect of your actions based on the predictions, yeah, you might want to do an experiment, do some action on health of the customers, some kind of A/B testing, or do some uplift modeling to see if this measure really helped to reduce churn. So that's churn modeling. More questions on churn?
Yes, but we're almost out of time, so I think maybe I can also collect them and then send them to you, and if maybe you can share the answers after the class.
Right. Yes. A few more, but those are only like highlighting them and not going into them. So in the same corner is we have something like customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is using very similar data as the churn example, data from the CRM, and it's about telling something about the lifetime value of a customer, which is of course given by how often is he donating, what's the average donation amount, but also how long do we still expect him to be a customer. That's linked with churn. Also for new customers, we want to predict this based on behavior of existing customers or longer term donors. It has a lot of similarities to churn modeling. It uses the same data, but in this sense, it's a supervised learning, but a regression model, because we want to predict a number, a lifetime. And of course, again, we might want to act on this. We want to be more proactive or do more actions on customers who have a high lifetime value than a lower customer lifetime. Upsell propensity, this is where we, again, quite similar to churn modeling, but now we're not afraid to lose the customers, but we basically want to sell more to the customers, maybe increase their donation amount, increase their donation frequency. But for the rest, it works the same. We would evaluate which customers we made upsell offers to in the past, and if they did it, yes or no. And again, we can use that to build a prediction model for our current customers, to see if we should also offer them the upsell, or it's better not to bother them because they might churn if we bother them too much. Then there's customer segmentation. It's about how we can segment our customer. Actually, all the previous applications already help to identify customer segments by looking at which features were important in the previous applications. That will give some kind of customer segmentation, sorry. And customers are often already segmented, for example, by product category or some rule-based segments. But still doing some data science-based, unsupervised learning, doing some clustering algorithm can help to reinforce all of this and help marketing to create better content and offers for different customer segments. So also can be a very relevant application for your donors. So that brings us to the end of the training. As a summary, we talked about how marketing analytics can help in fundraising, how marketing mix modeling can help to allocate overall marketing spend over channels, how targeting can help to approach the right people in the channel and plan channel activities, how A/B testing can help to increase conversion on your websites, and how churn modeling can help to prevent cancellations. And then we have also, of course, customer lifetime value, customer segmentation, and upsell propensity to get the most out of your customers and approach them in a segmented and targeted way. Questions? We're over time already.
Yeah, we are. So we can also I'll share the questions with you after, Maarten, and then we can post them in the Slack channel. I'd like to thank you so much, Maarten. This has been a great session on behalf of the ABW team. And I think we'll end it here. And I wish everyone a wonderful weekend.
Great. Yeah, and then